Why do the powerful hide their power? Why do those who have everything appear as if they have nothing? These questions strike at the very core of our social illusion. You see a man in worn jeans and a hoodie at the corner diner in Chicago. No flash, no bravado, just coffee and silence. What you don't see is that he controls a dozen companies, owns half a neighborhood, and wields influence in rooms you'll never enter. Why the disguise? Why the humility, or what looks like humility? The truth is far more calculated. In our world, perception isn't just reality, it's currency. Invisibility for the elite isn't a sign of weakness. It's a tactic, because to be seen is to be targeted, and to be envied is to be endangered. In a society obsessed with image, the man who controls his image controls his outcomes. What looks like modesty is often strategic concealment. Imagine this: you finally make a little money. You feel proud. You buy a nicer car, maybe wear a better suit to work. You expect respect. Instead, you feel the cold stares, the resentment, the whispered comments. You've triggered something primal: envy. Not admiration, but suspicion. Not support, but rivalry. Because the moment others know you have something, they begin plotting to take it. This isn't paranoia. It's psychological truth backed by centuries of social behavior. Scientific studies confirm that wealth visibility increases social envy, which leads to ostracization and even sabotage. A study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology presented participants with profiles of individuals. Some displayed prominent luxury items, while others had simpler appearances. Those who appeared more affluent were often perceived as less approachable and were viewed with more skepticism. This highlights one aspect of public perception. Now consider an alternative approach: a person who prefers a modest lifestyle and lets their actions speak for themselves. They are often seen as unassuming, which allows them to observe, learn, and concentrate on their goals without distraction. True capability is often developed through quiet, consistent effort. When they choose to take action, their careful preparation enables them to make a significant and positive impact. This demonstrates a thoughtful strategy, reminding us that there are many paths to achieving one's objectives. Adopting certain strategies without a solid foundation can lead to unexpected outcomes. It is important to first develop your skills and resources, as presenting oneself with modesty before establishing credibility can result in being overlooked. True influence comes from developing your abilities and then thoughtfully choosing when to apply them. A common misunderstanding is to mistake quietness for capability when there is little substance to support it. Skilled communicators understand the importance of perception. They guide focus and encourage positive responses by carefully presenting information. By thoughtfully shaping how things are seen, they help bring about successful outcomes. So as we begin this journey through the hidden laws of wealth and power, remember this: visibility is a liability, silence is a shield, but without substance beneath the mask, you're not hidden, you are forgotten. In part 2, we'll explore the first true principle of power: the art of perception. Why money isn't valuable by itself, but only in how it changes others' behavior, and how mastering perception is the first step to not just survival, but dominance in a world that worships appearance and devours the honest. Power is not in the possession of money. Power is in how others behave when they think you have money. This is the first principle: the power of perception. If you understand this, you understand the entire architecture of influence. Because $1 million in your account is meaningless unless it changes the way people treat you. Wealth is not paper. It's not even assets. It's leverage over human behavior. And perception is the medium through which that leverage travels. Let me explain. Imagine two men walk into a room. One wears designer clothes, flaunts an expensive watch, talks loudly about his latest investments. The other wears a worn blazer, stays quiet, and speaks only when asked. Who commands more respect? Most assume the first, but the second, if he plays it well, can become the most feared person in the room. Wait till you, because people fear what they cannot measure. The loud man is easy to decode. The quiet man, he's an enigma, and uncertainty breeds respect, even fear. This is why the elite master the control of perception. They understand that it is not about what you own, but what others believe you own. And more importantly, what they cannot know. Ambiguity is a weapon. Consider the Roman general Cassius, one of the wealthiest men of his time. He didn't flaunt his riches. He lent money in secret, made quiet investments. No one knew the exact size of his wealth. That made him dangerous, because in power, the unknown is more terrifying than the known. Contrast that with today's influencers. Flashing rented sports cars, fake watches, quite spread out like playing cards. They crave validation, not power. And in doing so, they show all their cards. People envy them, yes, but they also measure them. And once you are measured, you are no longer feared. The crowd moves on to the next show. Here's what you need to absorb. When you control perception, you write the story others believe. Sometimes that means downplaying. Other times it means strategic display, but it's always on your terms. You reveal only what serves your outcome. The rest is smoke. If they think you're average, good. You operate below the radar. If they suspect you're powerful but can't prove it, better. You become a question they can't answer, and questions create influence. But be warned, controlling perception is not about lying. It's about choosing which truths to amplify and which to let sleep. If you pretend to be poor with nothing to back it up, people will take you at face value and discard you. But if you are powerful and you choose to appear simple, people will lean in closer. They'll wonder, they'll speculate, and in their wondering, you gain ground. The lesson is simple but profound. Your image must be a tool, not a mirror. Don't reflect reality. Shape it, bend it, manipulate it until it serves your objective. Because those who own perception own behavior, and those who own behavior rule the world. In part 3, we'll explore the next critical principle. Patience. Why the most dangerous man in the room isn't the loudest, but the one who waits. The one who moves only when it's time to strike. Because in a world addicted to speed, the man who masters stillness becomes untouchable. We live in a world that rewards speed, urgency, and noise. But the paradox is this. True power belongs to those who wait. Patience is not the absence of action. It is the highest form of strategy. It is movement measured by precision, not desperation. And it is the second pillar in the hidden structure of the powerful. Look around. The average man wants results now. He needs applause now. He seeks recognition before he's even earned it. This craving, this impatience, it is the weakness that the powerful exploit. Because while the crowd rushes, the elite wait. They study, they prepare, they let others burn out, destroy themselves, and reveal their flaws. And then, when the moment is ripe, they move. One move, one strike. That's all it takes when you've waited for the right opening. Patience is the weapon of predators, not prey. The lion does not chase every animal that crosses its path. It studies, stalks, and waits. And when it does move, it never misses. Meanwhile, the hyena sprints at every sound, wastes energy, always chasing, never catching. This is the metaphor of life. Those who chase everything catch nothing. Those who wait dominate. Look at Warren Buffett, often hailed as one of the greatest investors in American history. He didn't build his fortune by constantly trading, jumping on trends, or seeking attention. He waited. For years. He read. He analyzed. And when markets panicked, when chaos reigned, he made his move. He bought when others were afraid. Not because he's brave, but because he was prepared. Patience was his sword. This principle isn't limited to money. In relationships, in careers, in conflict, the man who waits holds the cards. He lets others expose their plans first. He watches as they exhaust themselves. He studies their patterns, their impulses. And when the moment comes, he strikes where it matters. One decision changes everything. But let's be clear, patience is not laziness. It is not inaction. It is calculated silence, a refusal to be baited, a deliberate posture that says, I know my worth and I will move when it suits me, not when the world demands it. It is a rejection of the dopamine-driven hunger for instant results. And that makes it a form of psychological warfare. Ask yourself, do you seek to impress too early, Do you share your goals too soon? Do you move just because others are moving? That's not strategy. That's surrender. Patience is the ability to outlast your opponent's will, to starve their ambition while feeding your vision quietly, methodically. Remember, the farmer plants in silence and harvests months later. The impatient man wants the fruit without the season. He rips the roots too soon and wonders why he starves. Don't be that man. Learn to wait, but wait with purpose. In part 4, we will explore the third secret of the elite, leverage. Why the powerful don't work harder or smarter. They work smaller with maximum impact. Because once you combine patience with leverage, you begin to shift not just your path, but the landscape itself. Imagine this. Two men begin with the same resources, time, knowledge, and opportunity. One works tirelessly, 10 hours a day, grinding through tasks, answering every email, attending every meeting. The other stays quiet, makes one move, and earns 10 times the reward. What's the difference? Leverage, the third principle of hidden power. Leverage is the art of applying minimal effort for maximum result. It is not about working harder, nor simply working smarter. It is about working strategically. The powerful understand this. They don't scale their time. They scale their influence. They create systems, networks, assets, each one a multiplier of effort. One decision echoes through dozens of outcomes. Let's use a simple example. A man writes a book. That book sells for years, generating income while he sleeps. He is no longer trading hours for dollars. He is trading insight for perpetual value. That's intellectual leverage. Another builds software. With one upload, it serves thousands. Another invests in real estate. One deal brings recurring income for decades. These are not exceptions. These are the blueprints the wealthy repeat. Leverage is everywhere, but invisible to those trapped in survival mode. In business, it's owning the system, not just working within it. In politics, it's placing allies in the right positions, so your influence moves even when you're absent. In daily life, it's controlling the narrative others believe, so their actions serve your outcome without them realizing it. But let me make this real. There was a man in Manhattan who always showed up to meetings in plain clothes. He never interrupted, never impressed. People assumed he was an intern. What they didn't know was that he had quietly bought controlling shares in several firms. When the time came for decisions, he didn't speak. He voted. And his vote carried weight that no speech could rival. That's the essence of leverage, silent control. Most people mistake debt, noise, or popularity for leverage. They aren't. Fake leverage is a trap. It looks like power, but it collapses under pressure. The real kind is built over time, with strategy and patience. It's embedded in ownership, in systems, in positioning. It's the lever that moves the world while others strain to push. So how do you build it? First, stop selling your time. Invest in assets, ideas, systems, relationships that produce value independent of your effort. Second, create influence, not noise. Don't aim to be seen, aim to be remembered when decisions are made. Third, connect your small actions to big outcomes. Ask yourself, what can I build today that pays dividends tomorrow without me being there? Because the truth is, the rich pretend to be poor not just to hide their wealth, but to reduce expectations. No one asks favors, no one targets them. In that silence, they build leverage, quietly, until the day they no longer have to speak at all. In part 5, we will unlock an even more cunning tactic, substitution, the act of distraction. The way the elite use noise to hide action, drama to disguise strategy. Once you learn this, you'll never look at headlines, meetings, or flashy distractions the same way again. Picture a magician standing before a crowd. He waves one hand high, spinning fire and flashing rings, while the real trick happens in the other. That's substitution, a tactic as old as leadership itself. And it's the fourth principle in the architecture of power, control through distraction. Substitution is not lying. It is the intentional redirection of attention. The elite understand that most people are too distracted to notice real power. So they feed the masses noise, drama, controversy, spectacle. While the crowd reacts, the elite act, divamo, the public argues over shadows while the substance is stolen silently. You see this in politics. The headlines scream about tweets, affairs, or public gaffes. Meanwhile, laws are passed quietly in committee rooms. Lobbyists shift billions behind closed doors. The real game is never on the front page. That's the distraction. The real game is invisible unless you know where to look. You see it in business. The flashy product launch grabs all the attention, but the real money is made in the licensing agreement, the upsell, the quiet partnership behind the scenes. The average consumer chases the surface while the investor studies the structure. One is entertained, the other is empowered. In personal life, substitution is used just as effectively. The man who flaunts a rental car distracts attention from the fact that he owns nothing. Meanwhile, another man blends in with the crowd, unnoticed, while acquiring assets no one sees. The world gossips about one and is owned by the other. Substitution turns noise into a shield. This tactic works because the human mind is drawn to novelty, to outrage, to visible markers of success. But the mind also tires quickly. It does not want to look deeper. And that's where the powerful thrive. They play beneath the surface. They hand you a mask to argue about while they walk off with the gold. A legendary example comes from medieval Europe. A nobleman disliked by the court knew his rivals were plotting against him. Instead of resisting, he threw lavish parties. He invited them all, poured wine, played music, and made jokes about his own weaknesses. They laughed, relaxed, and underestimated him. Meanwhile, he was replacing key alliances, moving his money, and preparing his counterstroke. When he finally revealed his hand, it was too late. His enemies were disarmed by their own distraction. This is substitution in action, misdirection as power. So ask yourself, are you watching the show or are you behind the curtain? Are you reacting or are you redirecting? The man who chases every headline will never build strategy. The man who creates the headlines, he owns the room. Here's how to use it. When someone presses you for truth, give them a smaller one. When asked about your wealth, speak of your struggles. When probed about your plans, talk about something unrelated but interesting. Let them think they understand. Let them talk. Meanwhile, you build. In part 6, we'll delve into masks of identity, how the powerful wear false faces not to deceive, but to shape perception. Because once you understand the mask, you'll understand how to move through any room without resistance, and how to be underestimated until it's too late to stop you. We live in a world that judges within seconds. Clothes, tone of voice, posture, all are scanned instantly and conclusions are drawn. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the system. And those who rise understand this. That's why the next law of power is one of the most subtle and dangerous. Masks of identity. The elite wear masks not to lie, but to maneuver. They understand that identity is a social tool. It is a message sent to the minds of others. Sometimes that mask is humility. A man who wears worn-out jeans, drives a beat-up pickup, and orders the cheapest item on the menu. People assume he's struggling. They assume he's irrelevant. What they don't know is that he holds silent ownership over 3 businesses on that same street. The benefit? When people underestimate you, they relax. They speak freely. They expose their intentions. The underestimated man has more freedom than the admired man. He is not a target. He is not a threat. But he is watching. And that is the mask of the poor. Other times, the mask is wealth, but controlled wealth. Not flamboyant, not arrogant. Just enough to attract the right partners, the right conversations. This version is a lure. It suggests access, competence, potential. But even then, it's a disguise. Because the real power isn't in what is shown. It's in what remains concealed. The most dangerous mask of all is morality. The man who talks of honesty, fairness, and transparency, he preaches values. He shakes hands warmly. But behind closed doors, every move is cold, calculated, and precise. This isn't hypocrisy, it's strategy. Because most people let their guard down around virtue. They assume the moral man won't strike. And when he does, it's too late. History is full of these examples. One banker in 19th century Boston wore the same tattered coat and patched shoes for years. Even his competitors mocked him. But he remembered every transaction, every favor owed. When the city hit a financial crisis, he pulled strings quietly. The men who laughed at him now owed him everything. His appearance disarmed them. His intelligence enslaved them. But this is where many go wrong. They copy the mask without the substance. A man pretends to be poor, but has no wealth behind it. People believe him and ignore him. Another wears expensive suits, but borrows money to do so. Eventually, he's exposed. Another preaches virtue, but lacks the discipline to follow through. He becomes a fraud, not a force. The truth is, a mask only works if it covers something real. It must conceal depth, not emptiness. The rich use masks to protect leverage. The poor copy masks to gain attention. That's the difference between camouflage and costume. So ask yourself, what mask are you wearing? Is it strategic or is it desperate? Are you hiding strength or hiding weakness? Power comes from the ability to shift masks based on the room, to know when to be invisible, when to be desirable, and when to be feared. In part 7, we'll study a darker, sharper tool, controlled generosity, why the powerful give not out of kindness, but out of control, why every gift is a chain, and how those truly elite bind others through what appears to be compassion. Generosity is one of the most misunderstood behaviors in human psychology. Most believe it to be rooted in kindness, compassion, or goodwill. But for the powerful, generosity is a weapon. Controlled generosity is not about giving, it's about owning. It is the act of giving with intent, of binding the recipient not with chains, but with gratitude, guilt, and obligation. Let's begin with the most fundamental truth. Nothing is ever free. Not in business, not in politics, not in life. Every gift carries a shadow. It whispers, remember this, even if it's unspoken. And the rich, the truly powerful, they give knowing that most people will never forget who fed them, who rescued them, who opened the door. That memory becomes control. Kings of old understood this well. They gave land not to reward loyalty, but to ensure it. A noble who owed his wealth to the crown could never fully rebel. His very identity was anchored to the hand that gave. In modern times, billionaires donate to hospitals, not just for legacy, but for leverage. A wing with their name, influence on the board, a call answered instantly when they need it. But look closer at everyday life. A man helps his friend get a job. Years pass. The friend rises in the company, and then the favor is called in, subtly, quietly. I need you to push this deal. Loyalty has matured into leverage. The gift was not a gift. It was an investment. Now contrast this with the average man. He gives out of need, not strategy. He buys drinks hoping for friendship. He lends money hoping for love. He helps family members who resent him for his success. And every time, he weakens. His gifts are seen not as power, but as desperation. Controlled generosity means choosing your moment, giving only when the return is guaranteed or the loyalty is locked. It's not about being stingy, it's about being precise. Give when it creates dependency, give when it creates advantage. Never give blindly. A famous general once rewarded his soldiers with small pieces of land after a victorious campaign. They celebrated, believing it was pure generosity. But those lands were taxed, regulated, and tightly controlled by the general's estate. The soldiers could farm, but only with permission. They could earn, but not rise. The gifts secured their survival, but ensured their loyalty. That is the genius of calculated giving. So how do you use this? First, never give out of impulse. Ask yourself, what does this bind? What does this control? Second, use generosity to cement power. Offer opportunity, access, or resources only to those whose loyalty matters. Third, keep a ledger not of money but of favors. Who owes what? Who can be called upon? Who has not yet repaid? And finally, remember, giving can be a disguise. The rich pretend to be poor, but give generously in targeted ways. Their mask protects them, but their gifts create influence. That's the paradox. Appear small, give big, but only when it turns the world in your favor. In Part 8, we dive into the art of silence, how the most powerful voices are often the quietest, why silence is not emptiness, but information, and why the man who speaks last often controls the room. In a world saturated with noise, the man who remains silent becomes the one everyone watches. The next principle in the architecture of power is not about what you say, but what you choose not to say. Strategic silence is not emptiness. It is loaded with power. And when used correctly, it becomes one of the most dangerous tools of influence. Think of the rooms you've walked into where people spoke to prove something, to be liked, to seem smart, to display value. The need to talk is almost always rooted in insecurity, but the powerful are not insecure. They don't crave validation. They already possess certainty. And so they watch, they listen, they let others reveal themselves. A man who cannot stay silent reveals too much, his desires, his fears, his plans. And once revealed, he becomes predictable. Predictable men are easy to defeat. They show their cards before the game even begins. But the man who withholds, who waits, who speaks sparingly, he becomes a riddle. He forces others to second guess. That hesitation, that's leverage. Take the example of a CEO in Los Angeles. He attended weekly board meetings but rarely spoke. His executives debated fiercely, lobbied for favor, exposed their agendas. He just observed. Then, in one final meeting, he dismissed half of them. Not out of emotion, but precision. His silence had been collecting data. Their noise had built their own trap. This is the essence of strategic silence. It's not retreat, it's reconnaissance, Vuong. The quiet man is not weak. He's preparing. And when he speaks, every word lands like a hammer because it breaks the silence he's built so carefully. That's why when the rich pretend to be poor, they often pair it with quietness. They become invisible, not just in wealth, but in words. Psychologically, silence triggers discomfort in others. People fill the gap. They ramble. They explain too much. They bargain against themselves. In negotiation, the man who speaks first often loses. Why? Because silence creates pressure, and pressure creates mistakes. You can use this starting today. In meetings, listen longer. Ask short, sharp questions. Let others speak themselves into corners. In arguments, resist the urge to respond instantly. Wait. Observe the emotional rhythm. Let your silence become tension. People will reveal their entire strategy just to fill your quiet. But don't mistake silence for passivity. You must still observe, still analyze, still prepare. Silence is only power when it is intentional, mindful, positioned like a blade, unsheathed only when it counts. And remember this, the loudest person in the room is rarely the one in control. The one who controls the room often is the one who says the least, but watches the most. In Part 9, we'll look at another advanced tactic, scarcity and denial. Why the most sought-after individuals, products, and ideas are the ones that cannot be easily reached, and how withholding, not just silence, but access, is a force multiplier for influence. We crave what we can't have. It's hardwired into us, desire fueled by denial. And the elite know this. That's why the next law of power is scarcity. Not the absence of value, but the restriction of access. Scarcity isn't about lacking, it's about controlling. Think of luxury, a limited edition watch, a private club, a reclusive speaker. These aren't powerful because they're better. They're powerful because they're rare, because not everyone can have them. That's the principle of psychological scarcity. The fewer who can reach you, the more those few want you. The average man floods the world with himself. He's on every platform, in every conversation, always available, always responding. Why? Because he's afraid of being forgotten. But in doing so, he becomes forgettable. When you're always around, you lose value. You become common, and people don't chase what they can already touch. The powerful do the opposite. They deny, they restrict, they vanish. Not because they're hiding, but because they're calculating. A billionaire doesn't attend every event. A respected thinker doesn't speak at every panel. A high-value individual doesn't respond to every message. This selective presence creates mystique. It builds intrigue. It turns time, attention, and access into currency. Consider an artist in New York who released just one painting per year. No social media, no interviews, just a whisper. Collectors fought for each piece. His prices soared. Meanwhile, his peers posted daily, begged for attention, sold hundreds, and were forgotten. Scarcity turned him from a creator into a legend. Now think of your own life. Do people have unlimited access to you? Do you respond instantly? Say yes too easily? Make time for everyone? That's not kindness, it's dilution. You are watering down your presence, and in doing so, you lose respect, intrigue, and leverage. To use scarcity, start small. Delay response, say no more often. Let people wonder what you're doing. Reduce the number of times you speak and increase the impact when you do. Don't attend every event. Don't accept every offer. Don't explain every decision. The less they know, the more they want to know. This applies to everything, your time, your words, your presence. Make each one cost something, not in money, but in effort, in patience, in worthiness. Because once people have to earn access to you, they value it. And once they value it, they respect you. That's how you turn absence into power. Remember the warning. If you pretend to be scarce but have no value behind it, people will forget you. Scarcity must be backed by strength. It only works when you are already building something worth waiting for. But once you have that, once you've built leverage, scarcity becomes your amplifier. In part 10, we'll explore a principle most fear to use: controlled conflict. Why the powerful don't always avoid fights. Sometimes they create them. And how the right battle, timed perfectly, can be the key to dominance in any arena. Conflict is often seen as chaos, something to avoid, something dangerous. But to the elite, conflict is a tool, precisely wielded and strategically deployed. Controlled conflict isn't about aggression. It's about optics. It's about reshaping perception. It's about showing strength at the moment when everyone expects silence. Most people fear confrontation. They think harmony equals power. But harmony without dominance is weakness disguised as peace. The powerful understand that avoiding all conflict makes you forgettable. It makes you soft. They know that sometimes the loudest message isn't a word, it's a strike. Think of a man in a corporate setting. He's quiet, underestimated, keeps to himself. People gossip about his simplicity. Then one day, a rival attempts to undermine him. Rather than react emotionally, he responds with a single, decisive move. He exposes the rival's manipulation with facts, timing, and witnesses. Not only is the rival discredited, but the entire room now sees him differently. That's controlled conflict. Not rage, not chaos. Precision. Conflict, when used intentionally, becomes a narrative device. It tells the world who you are, what you stand for, and, most importantly, what you will not tolerate. A well-timed act of resistance builds respect far faster than 100 quiet affirmations. Because people don't remember the man who avoids problems. They remember the one who solves them decisively. The key is control. You don't engage every enemy. You don't react to every slight. That's emotional weakness. The elite choose their battles the way a master selects a chess move, deliberately, with layers of intent. Sometimes they create minor conflicts to distract attention from their real objectives. Sometimes they avoid fights entirely, not out of fear, but to deny their enemy the oxygen of attention. One Renaissance noble was mocked for his plain appearance and quiet demeanor. Rivals joked openly, calling him irrelevant. He said nothing. He smiled. Months later, he orchestrated an investigation that exposed their financial crimes before the king. They were exiled in disgrace. He never raised his voice. He just raised the stakes. That's the art of silent warfare. So how do you practice controlled conflict? First, stop reacting emotionally. Emotion makes you predictable. Power comes from unpredictability. Second, observe patterns. Where does conflict serve your elevation? Where does it distract? Third, plan your strikes. When you must respond, do it with facts, timing, and public visibility. Make sure the conflict tells a story you want others to remember. And most importantly, prepare while others play. Build your leverage quietly. Strengthen your alliances silently. When conflict arises, let them believe you're passive. Then when it counts, act with force and clarity. Nothing terrifies a man more than an opponent he thought was weak, revealing himself as a lion. In part 11, we reach the final transformation, the arc from invisibility to undeniable presence. Why the rich pretend to be poor only until the moment they choose to reveal power, and why the reveal, when done correctly, is the final act of control. Every mask, every silence, every delay leads to one defining moment, revelation. The rich don't pretend to be poor forever. They wait, they hide, they build, and then, when the time is right, they reveal, not just their wealth, but their reach, their influence, their dominion. This is the transformation arc, the final act of strategic evolution. It begins in silence. The powerful know that early attention is a liability. If you're seen too soon, you're attacked too early. So they plant seeds in quiet soil. They build systems. They establish alliances. They grow unseen. And the world assumes they're average, maybe even weak. That's the setup. It's the rope they hand to others to hang themselves with. Then comes the shift. The moment when the environment aligns, the opportunity opens. That's when the mask drops. Not fully, but just enough. Enough to shake the room, enough to make others realize the game has changed, and they never saw it coming. This is not showmanship. This is calculated dominance. Think of a tech investor who quietly funds companies, avoids headlines, and wears jeans and sneakers. To the world, he's another programmer. Until a major merger is announced, and suddenly his name appears at the top of the deal. Overnight, everyone realizes he's been behind the scenes for years, pulling strings, accumulating equity. He didn't become powerful overnight. He revealed power overnight. This is the difference between real power and performance. The average man chases visibility at every step. He wants applause before the performance is done. The elite perform in darkness and take the bow only when the curtains rise on their terms. Their reveal is not random. It is designed. It is the exclamation point to a silent strategy. Here's why this works. Human psychology respects mystery until it resolves into strength. When someone who seemed average suddenly displays overwhelming control, people reassess everything they thought they knew. That reassessment triggers respect, even fear. That's how authority is born. But don't mistake this for arrogance. The reveal is not about flaunting. It's about shifting position, from underdog to overlord, from question mark to answer. You don't show the world your hand until the hand is full. And when you do, every piece falls into place with precision. How do you plan your transformation? First, understand your arc. Where are you now? What foundation are you building quietly? Second, plan your timing. Don't reveal success before it secures itself. Let results compound in silence. Third, craft the moment. It could be a deal, a project, a public move, but it must be undeniable. When you reveal, do it with purpose. And remember this, transformation is not about shocking others. It's about reintroducing yourself on terms you control. The moment of power is not when others see you, it's when they realize they never really saw you at all. In part 12, we'll break down the psychological mechanics behind these moves, how the brain reacts to perception shifts, and how social status can be hacked through deliberate contrast and timing. The science of the transformation is just as powerful as the strategy. The human mind is not wired for truth. It's wired for perception. This means that people don't respond to your reality. They respond to the story they've built around you. And when you control that story, you control their behavior. The 12th law of power is by mastering the psychology of contrast, how to bend attention and shape status by shifting what people see and when they see it. Let's start with a core idea. The brain doesn't evaluate value in isolation. It evaluates value through contrast. Show a man a gold coin on its own and he may shrug. Show it next to a pile of dirt and suddenly it gleams. That same coin, same value, but its perceived worth explodes depending on what surrounds it. This is why the rich, the powerful, the influential control their context. They control when and how others discover who they really are. If you seem average long enough and then suddenly perform at an elite level, the contrast stuns people. It breaks their expectations. That psychological break opens the door for rapid status elevation. Studies in social psychology show that unexpected excellence generates stronger admiration than constant visibility. This is called the contrast effect. When someone performs better than expected, especially if previously underestimated, the reaction is far more intense than if they had always seemed competent. This is the scientific underpinning behind the silent builder's rise. By controlling the reveal, they multiply the reaction. Here's how this works in practice. Say you're the quiet employee, always on time, never flashy. People assume you're modest, maybe even passive. But behind the scenes, you're learning skills, building contacts, preparing a pitch. Then one day you present a project that reshapes the entire department. Suddenly, you're not just competent, you're a visionary. And the leap in status is not because of the work alone, but because no one saw it coming. The shock creates the status. This is how the most legendary moves in history are made. Not with a build-up, but with a rupture. An artist disappears, then returns with a masterpiece. A business person is seen as small-time until one deal makes them a titan. The contrast is the magic. The contrast is what flips perception. But here's the warning. You must build substance beneath the mask. If you create contrast without capability, you become a spectacle, not a force. You must have the weight behind the move, the skill behind the silence. Otherwise, the transformation becomes a disappointment instead of a triumph. To apply this, curate your presence. Don't always correct assumptions. Let people underestimate you when it serves you. Then reveal strategically. In environments where results matter, show results that break expectation. Let your actions be the revelation. Let your silence be the setup. Let the shift be undeniable. In Part 13, we'll examine how to combine multiple principles, substitution, scarcity, silence, and contrast, into one unified strategy. This is where you stop playing pieces and start playing the board. Because the final game isn't about wealth or status, it's about control over perception itself. Most people live their lives responding, reacting to the world, reacting to people, reacting to crises. The powerful don't react, they orchestrate. And the way they do it is by layering principles, stacking tactics like blocks in a fortress. This is where mastery begins. This is where you stop playing the game and start designing it. To truly control perception, you must move beyond individual strategies. Substitution alone distracts. Scarcity alone intrigues. Silence alone builds tension. But when combined, these tools become something else entirely. They become a system, a mechanism of quiet dominance that makes you invisible until you're undeniable. Let's break it down. Suppose you're building a business. You start by wearing the mask, playing the role of the underdog. People assume you're small. That's your first advantage. You don't correct them. You practice thoughtful communication, speaking with intention and asking insightful questions. You focus your energy in important discussions privately, while allowing other activities to be more visible. You value your time by being selective with your commitments and prioritizing your schedule effectively. You concentrate on building value, which naturally attracts interest and opportunities. Each approach complements the others. Your deliberate communication sparks curiosity. Your time management that enhances your professional standing. Your quiet focus allows your work to flourish. When the moment is right, you share your accomplishments, a new agreement, a collaboration, or a successful launch. Suddenly, the full picture of your dedication becomes clear, leading to a new level of respect for your work. They'll never underestimate you again. This layered approach is how empires are built in plain sight. It's how leaders rise while their peers are still clamoring for validation. It's how the elite bend in rooms without raising their voices. They are always several moves ahead, not because they're smarter, but because they've trained themselves to use every perception against itself. And here's the genius. Each tactic conceals the other. Scarcity protects silence. Silence disguises substitution. Substitution masks the buildup of real leverage. By the time people notice your ascent, you're already above them. That's not deception. It's strategic invisibility. In personal life, this works just as powerfully. Don't show all your cards in relationships, in friendships, in negotiations. Let others assume, let them speak. You listen. You guide the conversation subtly. You say no with a smile. You give rarely, but meaningfully. Every time you do, you bind others to your narrative, somewhere you see it. Because the truth is, people don't follow strength alone. They follow mystery. They follow consistency. They follow those who seem to always know when to act and when not to. In part 14, we'll explore the dangers, the mistakes that destroy all of this. Because while these strategies are powerful, they are also delicate. Used without depth, they collapse. And if you misunderstand their purpose, you don't become powerful, you become a ghost. Every powerful strategy comes with a shadow, and the higher you rise, the more dangerous your own tactics become, if misunderstood, misused, or mistimed. In this part, we face the edge of the blade, the fatal errors that destroy perception, erase leverage, and turn calculated players into invisible casualties. The first and most common mistake is imitation without foundation. Many see the behaviors of the elite, silence, modesty, mystery, and try to copy them. But they do so without substance. They wear the mask of poverty without the wealth. They act scarce without any demand. They go silent, not out of strategy, but because they have nothing to say. And the world punishes them for it. Because when you mimic tactics without purpose, you appear weak, not wise. You must never forget this. These principles are not costumes. They are shields. They are tools that protect and amplify power already in development. Silence only works when it hides preparation. Scarcity only works when people want access. Substitution only works when the real move is stronger than the distraction. If those truths are missing, the tactic collapses into parody. Another fatal error is overuse. The man who is always silent becomes irrelevant. The one who is always scarce becomes forgotten. The one who substitutes endlessly loses trust. Power comes from rhythm, knowing when to hide and when to strike. You cannot vanish forever. You must emerge, reveal, perform, withdraw again. That cycle creates impact. Without it, your presence decays into myth without memory. The third mistake is using these tools out of fear rather than strategy. Many people pretend to be poor because they're afraid of envy. They're afraid of competition. But fear is a terrible foundation for power. The rich do not hide because they're scared. They hide because it gives them control. The motive matters. If your motive is to avoid pain, you will design weakness. If your motive is to build dominance, every tactic becomes sharp. Finally, there's the mistake of confusing perception with reality. Yes, perception is powerful, but it must reflect something real beneath. You cannot live in illusion forever. You must have the results, the leverage, the network, the skills. If you build perception without foundation, it's like painting a mansion on cardboard. The first test will tear it down. So how do you avoid these traps? First, earn the right to use the strategy. Build in silence. Study. Prepare. Accumulate leverage quietly. Then and only then should you manipulate perception. Second, audit your motive. Ask, am I doing this to avoid or to control? Third, time your tactics. Reveal when it serves the goal. Withdraw when it protects the mission. Lastly, always tie perception to real power. Don't just look valuable, be valuable. Because power is not about being seen, it's about being undeniable when it counts. In the final part, part 15, we will bring everything together. The end game, the transformation, the closing moment where the mask drops, the silence breaks, and the true player stands alone, unshaken, untouchable, and unforgettable. And now we arrive at the end, not the end of strategy, but the moment of revelation. The moment the quiet builder steps forward, the mask drops. The silence ends, and the one who was underestimated, ignored, or dismissed becomes the one who cannot be challenged. This is the final transformation, the point of every tactic, every delayed move, every concealed plan. The rich don't pretend to be poor forever. They pretend just long enough to become unbreakable. Everything until now, patience, leverage, substitution, masks, scarcity, controlled conflict, strategic silence, has been about building. Building quietly, building without resistance, building without interruption. And then, when the architecture is complete, the curtain lifts. The world sees not the man who once was, but the force he has become. It is in this moment that the world pauses, because people do not remember consistency. They remember transformation. They remember the man who rose from obscurity and changed the board, not through noise, not through begging for attention, but by moving in ways no one saw coming. That shock, that shift in perception, it's irreversible. Once they see you differently, they treat you differently. That's how status cements. And this is the essence of the game. You don't win by playing harder. You win by appearing at the exact moment your presence matters most. You don't fight every battle. You choose the battlefield. You don't reveal every strength. You let others fill in the gaps. Always overestimating, always underestimating, always off balance. This is why the rich hide, not out of fear, but out of design. To build without noise, to move without resistance, to lead without asking permission. And when they emerge, they are beyond doubt, because power that was built quietly is power that cannot be taken loudly. So now the question turns to you. Which player are you becoming? Are you still chasing validation with no leverage behind it? Are you mimicking power without building strength? Or are you laying the foundations silently, strategically, patiently, knowing that one day the room will shift and every doubt about you will vanish in a single move? Here's the truth most ignore. The game is not just about money. It's about control. It's about perception. It's about shaping reality itself. You don't need to show the world everything. You just need to show them enough at the right time, in the right way, with the right force to make them believe you were always ahead. That is the art. That is the final act. And now, if this message stirred something in you, if it cracked open a door you didn't know existed, don't let it close. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you've learned, what you've lived, what you're building. Because transformation is not for the crowd. It's for the quiet few who are willing to wait, to build, and to rise. Your story isn't over. It hasn't even begun. But now you hold the blueprint. The next move is yours.